close.
Yeah. It's time to start, so we have other senators presenting bills and other committees, and they may be coming and going, so just bear with us regarding that. So this is the Appropriations Committee. Welcome to the committee hearing. My name is Rob Clemens. I'm from Elmwood and represent Legislative District 2. I serve as chair of this committee. We will start off by having members do have self-introductions, starting with my right.
Lauren Lippincott, District 34.
Tony Vargas, District 7.
Myron Dorn, District 30.
And there'll be others coming in as they are able to be here. Assisting the committee today is Tamara Hunt, our committee clerk. To my left is our fiscal analyst, Scott Donegal. In our pages today are Malcolm from Omaha, UNL student, and Kate from Kansas, a UNL student. At the entrance, you'll find green testifier sheets on the table. If you're planning to testify today, please fill out a green testifier sheet and hand it to the committee clerk when you come up to testify. If you will not be testifying but want to go on record as having a position on a bill being heard today, there are white sign-in sheets at the entrance where you may leave your name and related information. These sign-in sheets will become exhibits in the permanent record after today's hearing. To better facilitate today's proceeding, I ask that you abide by the following procedures. Please silence your cell phones. For bills, the order of testimony will be introducer, proponents, opponents, neutral, and closing. When we hear testimony regarding agencies, we will first hear from the representative of the agency. Then we will hear testimony from anyone who wishes to speak on the agency's budget request. When you come to testify, spell your first and last name for the record before you testify. Be concise. We request that you limit your testimony to 5 minutes or less. Written materials may be distributed to the committee members as exhibits only while testimony is being offered. Hand them to the page for distribution when you come up to testify. If you have written testimony but do not have 12 copies you wish to distribute, please raise your hand now so the page can make copies for you. With that, we will begin today's hearing with Agency 14, Public Service Commission. Welcome, Commissioner Watermeyer.
All right.
And you don't have a 5-minute limit.
I hope I won't need that today.
All right.
I got pretty short testimony here. So, good afternoon, Chairman Clements, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I am Commissioner Dan Watermeyer, spelled W-A-T-M-E-I-E-R, W-A-T-E-R-M-E-I-E-R, Chair of the Nebraska Public Service Commission, representing the 1st District. First, I would like to thank the committee for your preliminary recommendations for our biennial budget request. And next, I would like to address one specific item for your consideration. Program 683, the Nebraska Universal Service Fund. Our biennial budget request included additional aid appropriation and an additional analyst in the NUSF program. A few years ago, an additional accountability measure, the Commission modified its process for project reimbursement so that payouts would occur only when evidence of costs incurred are provided and also verified. This process requires review of documentation submitted by NUSF recipients. This, along with additional accountability measures, included review of speed testing information, have increased the workload requirements for the department. An increase in the program funded through the NUSF, as well as payments for approved broadband-capable infrastructure projects, have required additional staff time and increased workload, and as a result, additional staff is necessary. The committee funded both the aid and the PSL in the agency's deficit request, but did not fund the PSL in the biennial budget request. The analyst position will require ongoing funding to meet our increased workload, and we would renew our request to permanently fund the analyst position. And that concludes my testimony. We try to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? I wanted to clarify something.
No, I was expecting you to, yeah.
All right. I think you said program 683. I see program 686 is the Universal Service Fund.
I did say 683.
Oh,
686, let's correct that on the record. Thank you.
all right. Questions from the committee? We did look at that issue. I had a question I wrote when we were looking at that. How many staff is that you're requesting? Is just a one
Just one.
FTE?
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And this is a person who already is on staff?
Yes.
All right. And that was, the deficit request
Mhm.
was approved, but this one is still outstanding.
Right, exactly.
All right, that clarifies that. I just
Okay.
wanted to check with that. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none?
All right, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on the Public Service Commission budget? Seeing none? I see we have no position comments. That will conclude the hearing for Agency 14. We'll open the hearing for Agency 21, State Fire Marshal. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Chairperson Clemens and members of the Appropriations Committee. I am State Fire Marshal Scott Cordes, SCOTT, Cordes, CORDES. We thank you all for your time and effort that you've dedicated to preparing these agency recommendations. State Fire Marshal is charged with helping to promote and ensure public safety through a variety of code enforcement responsibilities and with enforcing state statutes related to fire investigations, burn permit activities, fire prevention outreach, education, and fireworks violations. These enforcement efforts are spread throughout the state of Nebraska. They encompass many state fire marshal agency divisions and involve numerous and varied fire marshal deputy positions. I support the governor's recommendations for the 2023-25 biennium. In my new role as state fire marshal, I will be working closely with the staff to learn more about the agency and determining the best ways to advance and move it forward. I will be having further conversation with the governor on the agency budget issues in the next few months. And the agency may address any further priority issues at that time. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clemens, and thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you,
I
sir.
believe you just have been appointed just lately.
6 days in, sir.
Yes. Thank you for making sure my memory's okay.
Yes, sir.
My question is more of a general, broader question, and when our Department of Engineering or whatever was here, I also asked them the same question. I've had 3 different entities, 2 in my district, call me or visit me in the last 2 years about the fact that the fire marshal gives them the okay to go ahead, they have the designs, the fire marshal approves those designs and go ahead and build. And then because there's maybe certain criteria in there, like maybe a food or different things, when they're about 2/3 done with the project, then the engineer, they get a letter from the engineer, Department of Engineering, or I don't remember the exact wordage of it, that now you have to have that stamp, or you have to have that approval. And generally speaking, all 3 of them have said the same thing to me. Their costs have gone up by from 10 to 20% because of that additional step in there. When I talked to them, I said, somewhere we're missing along the line is the communication, and I hope you can help improve that so that when your department okays that fire or your state fire marshal part of that we also at that time could have at least those people knowing that you also have to get this. Is that something, I know we'd be glad to visit with you more about it, because that's an issue that has come up. I hope as you go through this
Sure.
that we're able to do more.
Senator, excellent question. Nobody likes surprises. Late delays or cost overruns, those frustrations are absolutely should be a priority to avoid. Communication is the key. We've got to do better. That's my commitment to you. I've been in this business a long time at the municipal level. I was a fire marshal many years ago. So I pledge to you that will be our endeavor to do just that. Every time that fails to happen is a bad thing for everybody involved. And so your question is accurate, and I will do my best to make sure that we can make that better.
thank you for those comments, so.
Other questions? Senator,
Bill, I just thought I'd say welcome, Fire Marshal Cordes.
Thank you, Senator. Privilege.
any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your
Thank
testimony.
you for your time.
Are there other testifiers wishing to speak on the state fire marshal budget? Seeing none, and I see no position comments, that closes the hearing for state fire marshal. We'll open the hearing for Agency 54, Nebraska State Historical Society. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy Statehood Day. I feel like I have to say that. I wanted to bring you some cupcakes, but that seemed inappropriate. Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee, my name is Jill Dahlberg, Jilldolberg, and I'm the Interim Director of History Nebraska, the state's historical society. I'd like to introduce the president of our Board of Trustees, Jamesina Moore, and thank her for coming to support the agency today. I want to thank the Appropriations Committee for the financial support you've given us the past several years to support our efforts to become a more digital organization. Your investment in our agency has allowed us to emphasize scanning our historical resources and making them available to our citizens. To date, we have scanned nearly 15 million pages. We are custodians of the largest collection of Nebraska history-related materials in the world, and it's our intent to make it all digitally accessible. Digital projects have been strategically important this year because visitation to our museum and historic sites continues to lag a bit post-pandemic. The good news is that attendance is 180% higher than the last fiscal year, but we're still about 65% of our pre-pandemic numbers. So in addition to our digitization efforts for researchers, we have been offering virtual tours and programming to schools and have seen attendance increase 160% to almost 6,000 students last year, including students from 49 Title I schools. Our goal is to make our historic sites available in the classroom for districts that do not have the resources to visit in person, be that due to time, cost, or distance. But all of these digital activities and more are happening independently from each other. And we know that we could do a better job at all of it if we could focus on creating a digital strategy to make sure we're maximizing our opportunities. To this end, we have requested funding in our budget for a few key positions to be led by someone who is in tune with technology and would know how we might efficiently use it to our best advantage. Another major goal for History Nebraska is to transform the Thomas P. Kennard House into a center for civic engagement. Because of the house's significance, the legislature designated it as Nebraska's official statehood memorial. However, the house is not accessible and it has minimal amenities. Our proposed project is to reconstruct the former kitchen on the back of the house to create a fully accessible program space. We will host school children who will visit the Capitol to learn what it means to be a citizen of the state and of the nation, taking a minimally useful historic building and turning it into an asset for the Capitol complex and for the state. We started planning for this project right before the pandemic, and we have a conceptual plan ready. The cost estimate for the renovation is $2.3 million, factoring in the inflated cost of construction materials. We would like to ask to reappropriate our unexpended June 30th appropriated dollars into a capital construction fund program so that we may move this project forward. The History Nebraska Foundation will raise the remainder of the funds needed. To reiterate, we want to use money we already have. We don't want to cost the taxpayer any new funds. I'm excited about the Kennard House renovation, as well as a number of other innovative projects that we are working on at the moment. History Nebraska's goal is to be the most engaging and relevant historical society in the nation, and I'm proud to say that we're making great progress toward that objective. I thank you for considering our requests, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Other questions from the committee? I have a question. You're asking to reappropriate the unexpended dollars. Do you know what that dollar amount is expected to be?
Well, that keeps moving because we have a few months left in the fiscal year, of course, but we might end up with somewhere around 2 million. It might be something less than that. We have some people who've left our employ, so that we've had some payouts, and that might change things a little bit. We also have some vacancies we're having trouble filling, so it may grow or shrink depending on that.
And you're wanting to have History Nebraska Foundation raise the remainder of the funds.
Yes, sir.
Is that different than the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation?
Yes, there are two different foundations. One is about 80 years old, the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation, and the History Nebraska Foundation is about 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I've heard about the $270,000 figure. I wanted to know, where is that money now?
Right. Can I tell you the whole story?
You can tell me, yes.
All right, so in the summer of 2020, we were in the middle of a pandemic and we didn't know for sure how things were going to go financially. So we requested unrestricted funds from the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation to ensure our financial stability as our facilities were closed. We had no visitors and no income from our traditional admission sources. So those earned revenue were small or to nothing. So to keep those unrestricted funds as flexible as possible, we conveyed them to our supporting organization, which is the History Nebraska Foundation. Under federal law, as well as its articles of incorporation and its bylaws, the only thing that the History Nebraska Foundation can do is support History Nebraska. In fact, by law, the majority of our board members have to be History Nebraska trustees or affiliated with our agency. So we thought it was an extremely safe place for this money to rest while we saw the pandemic play out. We were very fortunate that we managed the pandemic financially rather well. We didn't have to lay anybody off or anything like that. The History Nebraska Foundation was a new entity at the time, and therefore they began using the funds to get the new entity growing so that it could best support History Nebraska and our work in and around the state. Approximately 18 months later, we received a letter from the state auditor's office questioning the transfer of funds from History Nebraska to the History Nebraska Foundation. We cooperated fully with the auditor's investigation, which also involved the Attorney General's office, the State Patrol, and the Lancaster County District Attorney's office. Ultimately, these agencies concluded that the transfer of funds from History Nebraska to the History Nebraska Foundation violated state law, but that nothing criminal had occurred. Nonetheless, the Attorney General's office late last year decided that we should, that the History Nebraska Foundation should return the funds to History Nebraska. So we've been working with the Attorney General's office and the Auditor's office, the State Budget Office, to work out a mutually acceptable plan for compliance. And once we have that, we will comply with that fully. So it's in process. We're figuring out a repayment plan.
Is History of Nebraska intending to comply?
Yes, absolutely.
And what's holding that up?
I think just coming to a mutually agreeable timeline with the Attorney General's office and the Auditor's office.
Some of this money was spent though, right?
Sure.
How much is not spent?
I don't have that information ready to my mind, but I can certainly provide that to you if you would like. I'd rather be
Yes.
precise than not.
I'd like to have an update as to
Okay.
that, and please report back when that is resolved. That was
Sure.
a concern that I had regarding auditor's report of inappropriate handling of the funds. Another item, I think I was aware or heard that the city of Lincoln gave some COVID relief funds to the Historical Society or some organization. Do you know?
It came to History Nebraska, $875,000. And we have until the end of December 2024 to begin spending it, or to spend it completely.
Have you identified purposes? for that?
Well, I wouldn't be too surprised. I'm fairly sure that we're going to spend some of it on the Kennard House. Am I right about that, Michelle?
All right. So
Well, it
that,
offsets operations costs. So if we're able to spend that money to operate our offices and keep people going, then we can reallocate the money that we would normally spend on operations to other projects.
why was that directed to the new History Nebraska rather than the traditional Historical Society Foundation?
Well, the grant was originally applied for by the History Nebraska Foundation, and it was originally granted to both, and then conveyed just to History Nebraska.
Okay, City of Lincoln did that.
Yes.
All right. I've received reports that there's been a lot of turnover at History Nebraska. How is the staffing level now?
Well, I think we are probably at about 75% fully staffed. We do have some key positions that have been vacant. There are some positions that are just a little bit difficult to fill, either because the pay ranges from state personnel are a little restrictive. Some of these positions are really specialized and don't really appear in lists of different positions that are available with personnel. So we're working on it. We're hiring all the time.
All right, Senator Wisher, you have a question?
I have a question about reappropriations. Our committee did move on allowing the Historical Society to use reappropriations for the Willa Cather Center.
Mhm.
So if we are to allow for the Kennard House as well, do you have enough reappropriations to manage the Willa Cather Center as well?
Is that for the statute? that you're
It's
referring
the
to?
the National Statutory Hall selection.
Absolutely, yes. That, we have one payment left to the artist to make, that is in the range of $30,000, I believe, or $33,000. And that's, to be paid once it's installed. It's still waiting somewhere in Maryland for us to have an appointment to install it with the Speaker of the House. So with the change in leadership, we've been
Yeah.
waiting for a date.
And that's it, just 30,000 one time.
And then some funding for the travel and for the university is paying for the reception. So no, we don't have to worry about those costs. There are some, I think, some incidentals, like they want to have some, we have some commemorative coins that have been made for people who attend.
Senator Dorn?
Thank you, Senator Clements. Thank you for being here. And I guess I'm looking for more clarification on what Senator Clements, kind of a follow-up rate is.
Sure.
Because you said there's about 275,000 in question that was transferred from one to the other. And that funding will be there, or that amount of funding is available there in the current one to transfer back. Where,
We
can you
won't,
answer that one? And then also, how much funding is in that other fund?
at History Nebraska
Yes.
Foundation.
Mhm.
That's the number I'm gonna have to look up to make sure that I get the number right. I can tell you that we have been spending it for the same kinds of things that we would have spent it on if it were at the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation. The foundations hire lobbyists, they pay for our legislative luncheons and things like that. So over the last 3 years, we have indeed spent some portions of it that it wasn't inappropriately spent, it was just spent. So I have to double check for sure how much is left, but
But help me out here, because it was in the current fund, you could spend it for some of those things. It would have been in the Nebraska State Historical one, you maybe couldn't spend it for some of those things.
no, it's the same kinds of costs. What was different is that the Nebraska State Historical Society Foundation requires us to make requests of those funds only quarterly. And we felt like with the uncertainties of the pandemic, we needed to be a little bit more nimble than that. So that it could reimburse for what, or pay for whatever we needed when we needed it.
When you give us the numbers or email them to more or whatever, can you also give us what's in both of those funds and that type of information?
Yes.
All right, another question. I heard a report that you were planning to hire a diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion person. Have you done that? Or is it?
We're still seeking one. It's
You
hard
are?
to find that position. What we are wanting to do is make sure that everyone feels like they're represented in our agency, but that their history is being told. We find that, like, for example, can I tell you about our historic marker program? You've seen them all over the state. We have 588 of them, I believe. And we did an audit of the program and the topics that are covered. And for the most part, as you might imagine, they cover lots of stories that are about westward expansion and very pioneer heavy, but very European American heavy. When they talk about Native Americans at all, for instance, it's always in the context of war and violence. And I think that there could be some balance in those stories. So we've started a program where we help flesh out some of the parts of our history that aren't particularly well documented, and not just about ethnicity or gender or any of that. For instance, we've started looking for stories about the arts in Nebraska because they're not very well represented in our marker program. Sports, we're going to have one about women's softball. We're really excited to flesh out our stories and tell them more broadly.
Well, I believe your purpose is to preserve Nebraska history, and that's, I'm okay with preserving Nebraska history. The some of the agenda with diversity and equity, I'm not sure how it preserves Nebraska history. Are you going to make sure that's maintained for your goal?
Oh, well, certainly. We want to tell all kinds of stories. There's a lot of history to cover. History tells us lots of lessons, of things that we've done well and things that we can do better. And I think it's important to record all of those tales and convey them.
That's all the question I had. Committee have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to testify regarding the Nebraska State Historical Society budget? All right, no. Seeing none, I see no public comments. That concludes Agency 54, State Historical Society. We'll open the hearing for Nebraska Arts Council, Agency 69. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Senator Clement and members of the committee. My name is Mike Markey, M-A-R-K-E-Y. I am the interim executive director of the Arts Council. I've brought some friends and partners with me today, none the least of which is the chairman of our council, Sherry Hofshire, who's with us today. I want to thank you for your continued support. I know for some of you, this is your first introduction to the Arts Council, and I will be happy to answer any questions about our programs and services. But first, there are two budget items in our request that I would like to address today. First, there is a supplemental request of $1,872 for rent increase that I believe was not included in your original packet for consideration. And I ask that you consider that small operational increase in your recommendation. Secondly, I emphatically ask you to consider our request for an additional staff position to help manage the popularity, growth, and success of the Nebraska Creative Districts program. I provided for you a handout that gives you an overview and status report of the program. Nebraska Creative Districts was instituted by the 2020 legislature with the purpose of creating jobs and developing economic tourism and in rural and urban communities across the state. In that short time, our staff has developed a comprehensive, effective program that has already engendered economic activism throughout the state and serves as a model now at the national level. To date, we have certified 6 creative districts: the Flora Creative District in Ashland, the Benson Creative District in Omaha, the Brownville Creative District, the Haymaker Creative District in Cozad, and the River Point District in Norfolk. And our newest member of the club, the Canteen District in North Platte. Several of those districts have already begun exciting civic projects that promise to draw people and create jobs. Projects made possible through multi-year development grants from the Arts Council. And there are 25 more communities that have begun the certification process, many of which should sound familiar: downtown Lincoln, South Omaha, Elkhorn, Fremont, Beatrice, Grand Island, Sydney, and Ogallala. You'll be hearing from some of our partners in those districts today in written and oral testimony. They will tell you of the rewards they've already realized from their community for their communities, discovering the breadth of their cultural assets, creating partnerships with civic, business, and creative leaders, and working together to come up with strategic plans for success. The success of the program is dependent to a large degree upon the ability of the Arts Council staff to provide intensive, hands-on counseling, resource development, and accounting services. We have reached a critical juncture where it is clear that we do not have the personnel resources required to certify and fund additional communities in a timely manner. And the future will demand even more from our small staff. Starting next year, new sources of funds legislated for the program become available through a collaboration with the Department of Economic Development. Multi-year million-dollar grants requiring another level of administration and oversight. I could go on, but you get the picture. I am proud of the work that we have done for the people and communities of Nebraska. I believe the Nebraska Creative Districts program will provide growth opportunities for rural towns and urban neighborhoods alike for years to come. And I know to make it all possible, we need you to recommend the new staff position we request and so desperately need. It's an investment in the future of the state. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Senator Busher.
Thank you for being here today. Do you recall that when we passed the creative district legislation initially, was included in the fiscal notes a additional staff person to manage
No,
this?
I'm sorry. If you remember the way that came about, that the program was approved, it's a certification program, and then in the next legislature, the additional funds came about, and they came about late in the operation. There really wasn't a fiscal note provided to that additional funding. So quite honestly, we didn't have the chance to say, whoa, that's going to be a whole nother level of administration. And we recognized that we really wouldn't know what the program would be until we had done it for a year. We've done it for a year. We know what it now entails and will entail going forward.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
All right, thank you.
We welcome other testifiers regarding the Nebraska Arts Council budget.
Senator Clements, members of the committee, my name is Lynn Rex, L-Y-N-N-R-E-X, representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities. We're here today in strong support of the request by the Nebraska Arts Council for an additional position of $51,000. That includes a salary and benefits. This is critically important because the legislature has had an appropriation coming directly from this committee. The legislature passed Bill 39 in 2021, which will appropriate additional funds. In addition, coming through the Sports Arena Assistance and Financing Facilities Act. In addition to that, LB 927 was a bill negotiated last year in 2022 by Senator Flood and the committee and passed by this legislature for FY 23-24 for those municipalities with creative districts to have access to the CCCFF funds, which are really, really important. And it's so important because I just want to commend the Nebraska Arts Council and the job that they've done all across the state. Rachel Morgan, not that I'm a fan of the entire staff, but Rachel Morgan is a rock star. She has done trainings all across the state for municipalities, including yesterday at the League Conference. We have municipalities that are extremely interested in creating these. They can really jumpstart a number of important things, not just tourism, not just economic development, but a sense of community all across the state, in small communities and big ones. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but this is really critically important. To me, it's sort of the flip side of giving the money, but not giving money for the agency to basically spend it, but to spend it appropriately. They have to have the staff to be able to walk through that and to make sure that the process is followed and that they can provide assistance to municipalities in the state. Critically important. So it's kind of an unfunded mandate. You gave the money through the various appropriations to them. Now they've got to be able to implement that, and they really need another staff. We don't want Rachel Morgan burning out. She's been doing a great job. Mike has too, and they have a fantastic staff, and we're happy to support this request today.
Any questions from the committee? An unfunded mandate may be a little bit strong words. It was something we were asked to do. We didn't force it on anybody, but thank you for your testimony.
May I respond just a
Sure,
little bit
go
to
ahead.
that? The reason why I say that, Senator, with all due respect, is because basically when they came forward, I mean, I don't know that the Arts Council itself was asking that those funds be appropriated to them, but the Revenue Committee did it, the Legislature passed it, they're doing great things all across the state, but they don't have the staff to implement it. The one person just isn't enough. And so when you look at 529 cities and villages in the state of Nebraska, we have 31 cities in the first class. We have 329 some cities in the second class and villages. So it's really, really going to be important to have that kind of assistance and the technical assistance for people to implement it. Because otherwise right now, they're an agency with the funds, but they really, really need the staff in order to assist municipalities and the cities and villages across the state.
I say thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your consideration.
Are there other testifiers regarding the Nebraska Arts Council?
Hello, I'm Morgan Fox, Morganfox. I am representing Main Street Beatrice in support of the Nebraska Arts Council. When my job was created in early 2022, it allowed Beatrice the ability to take steps to work towards the Nebraska Arts Council Creative District designation. This is something Beatrice had wanted to do for a while but had no available time or staff. Through this process, we have drawn area organizations closer together and brought new enthusiasm to our downtown. As we continue with the process, we have learned exactly how impactful the arts are in Beatrice and our economy. We look forward to utilizing the Nebraska Arts Council Creative District designation and grant funding to accomplish projects that foster local pride, create economic opportunities, and bring in downtown tourism. We already feel the enthusiasm in our community and a renewed vigor to showcase the arts in downtown Beatrice. This would not have been possible for our community without adding the coordinator position at Main Street Beatrice. Our current collaboration illustrates how having a strong team with the right people makes all the difference. The Nebraska Arts Council has been incredibly encouraging and helpful anytime we need guidance regarding the program. With the popularity of this program, we know that trying to meet every community's needs in a timely way is going to be very difficult. As more communities explore the Creative District program and apply for the grant resources the Nebraska Arts Council provides, we know it will and already has put a strain on Arts Council staff. To best serve communities, it is key to have the Arts Council staff members available to ensure to guide communities through the process and ensure grant funds are used appropriately. Having timely responses and site visits is vital to the health and prosperity of this program, and we support the Nebraska Arts Council in growing its team to make the program and thus arts in Nebraska and our state economy stronger. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Are there other testifiers regarding Nebraska Arts Council? Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Angie Stenger, ANGIESTENGER, and I'm the Executive Director of Growing Together Northeast Nebraska, which is the workforce initiative powered by the Exarban Foundation in Norfolk. I'm here today to share with you the importance of the Nebraska Creative District program through the Nebraska Arts Council. Growing Together, if you are not aware, is a plan outlining the proactive transformation of Northeast Nebraska's regional economy and population growth. The plan includes co-op scholarships where we're bringing Wayne State students into downtown Norfolk, the completion of our riverfront restoration, building an entrepreneurial ecosystem, and very importantly, arts as an economic driver. The arts are a powerful resource for revitalization and brings all these things together while providing physical, social, cultural, and economic benefits to our community, to any community. Norfolk's already home to many creatives and a variety of art activities. So the formation of a creative district helped unify and drive these efforts and interest forward to further bolster our economy and enhance vitality in Norfolk. Growing Together in cooperation with the Norfolk Arts Center and the Norfolk Area Visitors Bureau formed the administrative partnership to manage the River Point Creative District. And we've worked with the Nebraska Arts Council to receive the official certification and have also been awarded our development grant to continue this work in downtown Norfolk. We plan to use the Creative District Development Grant to help fund amenities specifically geared toward attracting and retaining young adults, because our goal is to reverse the out-migration of 20 to 29-year-olds. The efforts of the River Point Creative District will encompass a creatively driven projects in downtown Norfolk. That it also includes Johnson Park and the riverfront that it borders. This will allow us to build on both performing arts and cultural festivals that were identified in our strategic plan. And all of these play together to the goal of attracting young, new residents and businesses. As one of the first designated creative districts in the state, we've received many calls from other communities saying, how did you do it? And how can we help? Or how could you help us? And I'm always happy to share, and we're always happy to talk, but I'm sure the number of calls that we don't get are much greater because they go to the Nebraska Arts Council. And one thing that I always share is that we have accomplished this only because of the support of the Arts Council and the expertise that we receive. So while we are just in the beginning stages of utilizing our development grant, the staff has been very responsive and keeping us in line and helping us make sure that we are within the outlined parameters. But that will continue to grow. We believe the Creative District designation will support this state's ability to grow jobs, increase educational and cultural opportunities for residents and visitors, and it plays directly to the importance of creating more jobs in Nebraska that will entice the next generation to stay here. So please help support this movement and providing the Arts Council with the additional staff person they need and the funding for that. I appreciate your time today and welcome any questions, and always invite you to come check out the new creative downtown Norfolk. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Saying none, thank you for your testimony. Are there additional testifiers regarding Nebraska Arts Council? Please come forward. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Worth, Steveworth. I'm currently the volunteer manager for the Brownville Creative District. I'm also the current director for the Steamboat Trace Association and past president of the Brownville Historical Society. I'm here today to testify on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council Creative District Program funding for an additional person to support this program. First of all, though, I want to thank all of you, to thank the legislature for establishing and supporting this program. I don't have time to go into all of the benefits that this program has not only had for Brownville, but also for other small communities across Nebraska. It is helping us focus on a common goal and establish plans for our future based around the economic development we can attain through the arts and humanities. Then, on top of that, it's providing funding of the sort that is geared towards small communities without a lot of financial resources, something that is sorely needed throughout rural Nebraska. Right now, there are 6 certified creative districts from North Platte to Brownville, but by this time next year, there could be 36 of us. But as there are almost 30 applicants in the process. In order to become a certified creative district, there's an application process which requires that you really want to become a creative district, and that you have to know who you are and have a plan on where you're going. It took Brownville almost a full year to complete the process, and without Rachel's help, it would have been much tougher and a much longer journey for us. She was there with us all along the way and was just the kind of support that small communities needed to get through this process. The journey could probably be made easier, but truthfully, the process that we went through was probably one of the biggest benefits that Brownville has gained from this program. Although the grant money is great, here in Brownville, we're a town of 139, and I have 9 nonprofits in Brownville. What the process did for us was bring us all together for a common purpose and development of a common set of goals. For that alone, I thank the Nebraska Arts Council. With a large number of new applications for more creative districts across the state, Rachel, there's just no way that she can do this alone and provide the support that we need. Please help them help us. Provide the funding for the additional staff member that they need to help us small communities all across this great state of Nebraska. And thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Other testifiers regarding Nebraska Arts Council? Welcome.
Hello. My name is Sherry Rudin, Sherryruden. I am the Executive Director for the Norfolk Arts Center. I'm here today to testify for the importance of the Nebraska Arts Council to add that position for the Creative District program. As a nonprofit organization, the Norfolk Arts Center began in 1978 with the sole purpose of enriching the lives in the Northeast Nebraska community through visual arts. Over the years, our mission has grown to include education, performing arts, and many community activities. We believe the presence of the arts in the Norfolk community is a powerful economic development asset to recruit and retain community members, visitors, businesses, and entrepreneurs. An administrative partnership was formed between 3 entities: Norfolk Arts Center, the Norfolk Area Visitors Bureau, and the Growing Together Initiative, which is through the Exarban Foundation, to create and manage the River Point Creative District that we now have in Norfolk. This has enabled the artistic and cultural community to join forces to expand our creative experiences and opportunities for all within the defined district. The Norfolk Arts Center acts as the fiscal agent and works closely with the Nebraska Arts Council to administer and manage the grant funding. Historically, the Norfolk Arts Center has worked closely with the Nebraska Arts Council to receive state funding and support through their basic support grant and several other project grants. When we needed direction and further instruction to meet the deadlines and submit a proper reporting, the staff of the Nebraska Arts Council has always been very helpful, proficient, and diligent in giving us direction. We found this to be true as we began our process to complete our workbook, develop our strategic plan, and become the certified creative district that we are. Many times we reached out to the staff, who are always pleasant, knowledgeable, and happy to help. Norfolk was the 5th community in the state of Nebraska to achieve our creative district designation. We have been contacted by several other communities who are working in this process. We're happy to discuss our journey and answer any questions, but would not have the credibility of the designated staff person that is needed for this program. I recently saw the working map that shows all of the other communities in the state of Nebraska that are working somewhere in this process. As these numbers continue to increase,
there's only going to be more inquiries, paperwork, tracking, and all the other things that need to be done by the Nebraska Arts Council to help everyone. The lives of all people and the quality of life in their community is enhanced by the presence of the arts. We are strongly supportive of allowing the Nebraska Arts Council to add an additional staff person to help to make that possible across all the communities in the state of Nebraska. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Are there other testifiers regarding Arts Council? Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Chris Summerich, ChrisSommerich. I'm Executive Director of Humanities Nebraska, which is a statewide nonprofit organization whose mission is to help people explore what connects us and makes us human. I'm going to go off script for just a moment about the creative and mention the creative districts and just say that in our work throughout the state in the humanities, I hear all the time a lot of excitement about the creative districts programs, and Humanities Nebraska hasn't been involved too much in that at this point. We've, other than having some staff help on review committees, but we are eager to be a partner on this as that program continues to grow. So I just wanted to make that comment quickly. For 50 years ago, our organization, Humanities Nebraska, was created in response to two fundamental ideas: that a strong democracy requires informed and engaged citizens, and that all Nebraskans should have the opportunity to enrich their lives through the humanities. So when we engage in history and literature and culture and philosophy and other such areas to think about where we've been and where we are now and where we're going in the future, we are using the humanities. Humanities Nebraska has grown a lot over the 50 years to effectively meet the changing needs of our state and its citizens. From the beginning, we provided grants to local organizations that wish to bring people together to explore important humanities topics. Since our founding, we've granted out over $10 million to support local museums and historical societies and educational institutions and other community gathering places. For the last 40 years, we've had a speakers bureau that's been available to schools and libraries and senior centers and other community groups to bring excellent speakers on a wide range of topics. Since 1983, more than 15,000 of these speaker programs have happened all over Nebraska. In 2022 alone, 353 programs took place in 149 different communities, which was a 39% increase from the previous year. We've added over the years other programming to meet a variety of needs. Biggest area of growth is our primetime family reading program, where children and parents gather in libraries and schools and community centers to read and discuss books. Others include Capital Forum in America's Future, with high school students exploring global issues and why they matter in Nebraska. Nebraska Warrior Writers Workshops for veterans and active military who come together to write and process their experiences. We work hard to raise private money to support as much of this work as possible, and we receive federal funding through the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're the state partner for the NEH. However, our reach would not be nearly as broad or effective without the support of the Nebraska Legislature and the Nebraska Cultural Endowment. Thanks to you and those that served in the legislature before you, Nebraska benefits from a truly remarkable partnership between the Nebraska Arts Council, Humanities Nebraska, and the Nebraska Cultural Endowment. And in a typical year for us, roughly a third of our budget is made possible by state funding and cultural endowment funding. And the grants that we give and the Speakers Bureau that I highlighted are two areas that are heavily supported by that funding, which really enables us to reach the entire state from the smallest rural communities to the big urban areas and everything in between. So above all, I just want to thank you for your support. Since 1990, Humanities Nebraska has had an appropriation from the legislature that comes through the Nebraska Arts Council. And for the last 7 years, that budget has stayed flat, just under $200,000. But meanwhile, the growing public-private partnership with the Nebraska Cultural Endowment and the Arts Council and Humanities Council are helping us serve more Nebraskans every year. You'll hear more about that in a moment from Maggie Smith, the Nebraska Cultural Endowment Executive Director, but that's it for me, and I just want to thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Director Summerich.
Okay, thank you.
Additional testifiers on the Arts Council. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm very grateful for your time today. My name is Maggie Smith, Maggie Smith, and I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Cultural Endowment. 25 years ago, Nebraska became the first and only state in our country to create a public-private cultural endowment that supports both the arts and the humanities. Nebraskans are very proud of that legacy, and we have cultivated it, and it continues to grow. This endowment, along with its constituents, the Nebraska Arts Council and Humanities Nebraska, work to make Nebraska culturally vibrant and a very economically competitive state. I began my role as the director of the endowment in March of 2022. And in June, my 14-year-old daughter and I took a road trip to visit some of the cities and towns in Nebraska that have benefited from grants and programs from the Nebraska Arts Council and Humanities Nebraska. We visited Norfolk, Kearney, Chadron, Alliance, Gering, and Scottsbluff, just to name a few. And in each town, we met people that were running arts and culture organizations and creating programming, sometimes on a shoestring budget. These folks were making, inspiring, and bringing people together. They were also helping their communities by creating jobs and retaining young people. They also were creating events and opportunities that attracted tourism. I was inspired by all of these people, and at some point in my conversations, they all said they could not have done what they did without the support of the Arts Council and Humanities Nebraska. I'm here to voice my support to these amazing organizations and to specifically request your approval of the Arts Council budget, including an additional staff position to help manage the popularity growth and success of the new Nebraska Creative Districts program. The Nebraska Cultural Endowment has only 2 staff members, myself and another part-time employee. And you might ask why that's relevant. Well, it's relevant because we historically have kept our staff and our operational budget very low so that we can allocate as much funding as possible to the Arts Council and Humanities Nebraska. Their teams are the ones managing those funds, creating programming, developing grants, and then managing all of the grant applications. They are the ones who need support to manage and maintain these incredible opportunities for Nebraska's communities. I sit in on their staff meetings. I can attest firsthand that they are incredible teams who are always balancing a lot. To provide an additional employee for the creative districts will not only support its success, but it will also help maintain a healthy arts and culture commitment in this state. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there other testifiers regarding the Arts Council budget? Interim Director, would you please come up? We had another issue to ask you about, if you would please.
Sure.
Senator Wisher.
Director, thanks for coming back up. It does seem pretty compelling, the need for having additional support as we're seeing more and more opportunities for these creative districts. Has your team thought at all about setting up an administration fee for grantees that would pay then if they're looking to have a cultural district in their community, would pay, and then those funds would go to support a staff person?
Well, we have looked at a number of different things that's been considered. Our first step was to come here and talk to you all about the appropriations. Next steps are, and we'll go from here if this should not prove successful. It is a possibility. We would have to work out the details of all of that, which again is another level of administration that we're not as a staff really geared to do. So that would take some other study. It doesn't mean it couldn't possibly work, but it would have some problems to it. It would be just another shift in direction for our staff though.
Yeah.
Best way I can answer that.
Yeah, if your team could consider and get us something a response back on this, whether if someone is applying for the funds through your granting process, that as part of that, there is a fee that is attached to that would go then to support this staff member.
And in such a case, just so I understand the picture, in such a case, you might approve the PSL, but the funds would have to
Yes.
come from elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay, I'd be glad to put that together for you.
Yeah.
How soon would you
Put
need
that
that? Right away,
together.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you for that. Are there any other testifiers regarding the Nebraska Arts Council budget? Seeing none, we do have some comments. We've received position comments for the record. 8 proponents, no opponents, no neutral. And that concludes Agency 69. Now we're going to switch to bill introductions and bill hearings. Go ahead and have a seat. We're going to have to switch notebooks here.
Does this then go to the Public Service Commission, this first bill? Yeah.
Is that a, what if you apply it to, is that a percentage?
I don't know. I want them to figure that out.
Arts Council? Yeah, I'll agree. Door day.
All right. We'll open the hearing now for LB 361. Welcome, Senator Norton.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to testify in front of the committee. Chairman Clemens and members of the Appropriation Committee, for the record, my name is Myron Dorn, M-Y-R-O-N, D-O-R-N, representing District 30, and I'm here to introduce LB 361. Last year, I introduced and the legislature passed the Precision Agriculture Infrastructure Act. The intent of the act was to incentivize our agricultural producers to adopt critical tools that will give them the ability to leverage their data and substantiate what we already know. They produce our food, fuel, and fiber in a sustainable and human way. The Public Service Commission will be administering the program to provide grants to network providers to offer connectivity to on-farm structures and devices. In addition, grants are available to an ag producer, cooperative, or agronomist for solutions and products that promote traceability, soil health, water efficiency, or autonomous solutions. These practices could include blockchain or other traceability solutions, autonomous machinery such as grain carts, spreaders, precision drone scouting or scouting robots, soil moisture probes, soil amendments, or water efficiency seeds. Under amendment by the Transportation and Telecommunications Committee, the original source of funding for the Precision Agriculture Infrastructure Act was to come from the Federal Broadband Equity, Access and Development of BEAD, which is BEAD funds. The amendment allocated $2 million in BEAD funding per year. After the bill passed in April 2022, the Public Service Commission determined that these BEAD funds were not available to fund the portion of the program that awards grant to producers to adopt precision agriculture practices. Because of this determination, the work the legislature set out to accomplish last year in passing the Precision Agriculture Infrastructure Act has stalled. Producers' attempt to adopt precision agriculture practices are fruitless without funding for their grants. LB 361 is a stopgap measure that provides $2 million to general funds or the biennium to effectuate the purpose of the act as it was passed in 2022. In passing the Precision Agriculture Infrastructure Act last year, the legislature recognized the need to empower our agriculture producers to adopt these critical practices. These producers are the backbone of our state, and the products they produce are the building blocks of our economy. LB 361 is a one-time allocation of funds to enable our agriculture producers to begin innovating while we continue to work towards identifying a stable source of precision ag funding with our congressional delegation and the Public Service Commission. This program is the first of its kind in the United States. Nebraska is being looked to in other states and at a national level as a model for this type of transformative legislation. To ensure Nebraska's legacy as a leader in the precision agriculture persists, a viable funding source is necessary. I appreciate the legislature's recognition of the importance of this groundbreaking legislation in the passing the substantive bill last year. Now I'm asking the legislature to follow through with its commitment, and continue our position as a leader of agriculture production in this country. Thank you for your time, consideration, and recommendation of advancing LB 361 to the floor.
Senator Wishart.
Thank you, Senator Dorn, for bringing this bill. As I'm reading it, the Precision Agriculture Infrastructure Grant Program not only can hold state funds, but can also handle federal funds.
Last year, that was part of this program, that this was going to be, it was in the Transportation Committee package that came to the floor and passed through that there was federal funds, and most likely, or there will be people behind me that will give you a definite answer, but that there could be those possibilities again. But last year, there were going to be the federal funds, the BEAD funds, that were going to be where they came for the source of funding for this.
Okay, so it is possible then that if the legislature invested $2 million one time in startup, that we could in the future utilize other federal funding through this grant program. Could we also utilize private funding? Let's say a private company wants to contribute dollars to this fund.
Could definitely use private, but there's also that possibility of federal, not guaranteeing that it will be there. That was the program that they were going to use last year. There's, as you know, much federal funding for broadband and those types of projects. Now, they will have to apply, and exactly how those will fit, some of the people behind me will have a better understanding of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Armendariz.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks, Senator Dorn, for being here. Did you get clarity on why the BEAD funding wasn't available, and exactly what does it outline if it doesn't cover this?
And I know I will, one of them right behind me here, he'll testify for the exact reason or whatever.
I'll save that for
Save that question,
them as well.
But basically, the Public Service Commission came back and said, no, the way this was going to be funded and through that program, it was not allowable going through their program or whatever. So that is why this bill is brought back. Even though we approved it last year, Public Service Commission determined, and I hope I'm right, we'll make sure I'm right, but that they determined that this could not be funded through this BEAD program to fund this here. So that's why we had to bring it back again.
Well, darn it, they were here earlier. Are they still in the room that could answer the question?
No, I don't see Chairman of the Board Watermeyer here, but part of what he'll explain is how the conversation's been ongoing and why now the need to bring this bill back and then possibly have this as we can use it. The clarity of why it can be allocated, and then we'll be able to use this year.
Any other questions? Senator Vargas.
Well, no, we'll get some more answers here on some of the other questions about why it's not eligible use within the framework of BEAD. I don't know if you could speak to one of the grant types. It seems like one grant type is potentially eligible if we get approval. I don't know if you could speak to that, or if I should ask.
That I'm going to let somebody later here verify those details, because I have a general concept of it.
Okay.
But then he may come back up and straighten out my comment too. So.
Because, but one of the questions I'll have for them as well is on, is it that the funds can't be utilized within this program within the PSC, or is it just the BEAD program on its own? Is there something that has to do with the PSC being a barrier? Is there something that we would have to move the program within the state? And the other question I have, if it's within the PSC, there have been times where we've used, interest from the Universal Service Fund
to fund different programs and projects. If indeed, for Senator Wishart's recommendation, if we are trying to get it started, that could be a potential source of being able to fund.
All I know is last year, this bill was Transportation Committee. This was included in a grouping of bills that came out of the Transportation Committee. And then it was passed on the floor in that grouping or whatever. Then as they went to get but not to get the funds or have the funds and be able to use and appropriate it, they said that could not go through, somehow it could not be brought through that. And they will explain that better than I am or can or whatever, so.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Senator Dorn. We will now open the testimony for proponents of LB 361. Welcome.
Thank you. Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Julie Bichelle, spelled Juliebushell, and I'm the president of Ethos Connected, formerly Page Wireless. Ethos Connected believes connectivity is the foundation to putting the power in the hands of individuals, communities, and specifically the agricultural producers that we serve. Over the last 4 years, Ethos has constructed North America's first statewide LoRaWAN network in Nebraska to enable precision agriculture and real-time water management. Our projects encompass the 320,000 acres of real-time water management with the Twin Plat NRD, management of multiple livestock operations, and supporting several technology initiatives with the University of Nebraska. We have covered the state with network that connects cropland, livestock operations, villages, and rural businesses. We know through on-the-ground experience that connectivity and precision ag technologies are critical to increasing on-farm revenues, retaining the next generation of our ag leaders, and growing rural communities. Benefits that will be realized from the passage of this bill include efficient irrigation and water conservation, improved soil and water quality, and valuable jobs on farms and in our rural communities. LB 361 is the catalyst for value-added agriculture here in Nebraska, driving premiums to producers and our state. Ethos sees LB 361 as a foundational piece of legislation that would invest $2 million in our rural communities with billions of dollars in returns. We appreciate this body's previous recognition of the bill's value by passing the act last year. But we must deliver on the promise made to the next generation of our ag producers in the state. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
Senator, I can probably answer the previous questions to Senator Dorn. I think the issue with not getting this funded through BEAD is the part of the bill for technology direct to producers and agronomists. So the on-farm connectivity portion to network providers is, I think, no problem whatsoever to fund within BEAD. It's that second component of the bill.
Senator Borges, yes.
So that's helpful. What amount of the funding was dedicated to the part that wasn't deemed eligible?
1 million. So 1 million for precision ag technologies and 1 million for on-farm connectivity.
So with the 1 million of the non-eligible, that has been deemed eligible under BEAD?
On the on-farm connectivity portion,
Okay.
you are correct.
It's good to know. Was there already an application put in, or was this just based off of just the analysis of whether or not it was?
It
an
got to the
eligible
point
use?
of being posted for open comment. I think there was overwhelming support from the public, and then we found out just a few months ago that it wouldn't be eligible through BEAD.
Got it. Okay. And then for there was 4 different types of grants, right? One of them was eligible. Is that a separate type of program within this? It says 3 of the 4 grant types laid out do not appear to be eligible, so one of them is eligible. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's just the on-farm connectivity
the
portion,
on-farm
which falls within the requirements by the federal government for the infrastructure funding. The original bill was written so that it would fall under that agreement, meaning, 100 by 20 symmetric service on the farm. That part was no issue. And I would say, in my mind, there's two parts to the bill. One can be looked at as going to, broadband connectivity to network providers. And then the other portion, direct to producers to choose the technologies that work best for their operation. That part is the hang up under the BEAD funding today.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Dover?
Yeah, I don't know who's the best to answer, but if, as Senator Vargas pointed out, if 1 million of it was qualified, why is he asking for 2?
So the bill itself, originally, to me, it's an economic development bill rather than, just sticking it in broadband. I think the precision ag and technology piece of this bill is a critical component to drive premiums back to Nebraska's producers. So we can have connectivity, but if you don't have the technology to enable the operation. So that's why it's a different bill, right? There are multiple components of it. But then it was moved over to the TNT committee, which really put it in that broadband focus. And then that's really how we ended up here.
My understanding is that you said that the connectivity part would qualify for the grant, and that was about $1 million of the $2 million. And the original bill was stated for $2 million, so I don't understand why did the adjustment for 1 million, does that just come out in the wash?
So the bill is for 1 million for connectivity, broadband connectivity. And that is what was funded, could be funded under BEAD. The balance of the bill, which was always 2 million, is for just technologies. And I think the PSC struggles with how to administer that part of it. They've never really given grant money direct to agronomists or to producers.
Senator Armendariz.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm glad that I'm learning more as I'm listening to you talk. So you're looking for $2 million for the technology piece now. So we've already established that all the farms are going to get the connectivity through BEAD.
No, 1 million for technology. The full bill itself is for $2 million.
Okay.
1 million of that was to go to on-farm connectivity.
Connectivity. So,
Correct.
So I think that I misunderstood when you were talking to Senator Dover that you said that the whole bill was $2 million and that was technology, but the whole bill is $2 million and $1 million of it is connectivity.
Exactly.
That could be covered by BEAD, and I think that's what he was trying to get to.
Correct.
Why don't we get the connectivity covered through BEAD and peel off the technology piece and have that handled
I
somewhere
think
else?
that's definitely an option.
My
for
concern
sure.
is that it got passed as a bill without anybody knowing BEAD wouldn't cover it. How did it get that far?
It was originally in the Broadband Bridge Act and then moved to PSC, and the conversation became, can we fund this under BEAD? So
Shouldn't that have all been done before that got passed? So, I mean, I'm feeling like it would have got put in front of me and all the educated people would have said, we've got this covered. And now, a year later, you're like,
Yes, I think probably two things happened. There was quite a bit of also public question around BEAD funding and what would be eligible. And so I think it was prudent to take it and say, okay, could this fall under federal funds that are coming? We now know that it can't. I would suggest maybe looking at it under Broadband Bridge Act again, which was originally where it was supposed to sit.
Other questions? Senator Dover?
Yeah, so in the, excuse me, estimated provided, the estimate here says 2 million general funds, 2 million, minus 2 million federal funds is the total funds of 0. But what you're saying really is that you're asking for $1 million from general funds. The other $1 million will be through BEAD. Is that correct? For a total of 2 billion, but you're really just requesting $1 million. Is that correct for general funds?
Well, I think that's a great option. I think if 1 million could be funded under BEAD and 1 million general for the technology portion, that would be a fantastic outcome. Thank you.
Excuse me. Are there any other questions?
Well,
Senator Vargas?
I appreciate you being here. And sometimes we have programs that we don't always see happening in other committees that are created, that are trying to leverage their federal funds. So I do appreciate that. It's unfortunate that we didn't get the guidance, at least what I've been told is that the federal parameters didn't get finalized until after the session ended, which means you were trying to be a good steward of dollars. I think we're also trying to figure out how we be good stewards of this and get as much funding that we can get out of the BEAD program. And but I appreciate you coming and testifying to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other proponents for LB 361, please. Welcome. Excuse me.
Thank you, Senator Clements, and the rest of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Lucas Fricke, spelled Lukas Fricke. I'm a sixth-generation farmer from Ulysses, Nebraska. On our farm, we raise corn, soybean, and barn-raised pigs. I've been lucky enough to actually adopt some of the technology that Julie was talking about just right before here, the LoRaWAN technology. But I took a risk in doing it. So sometimes when adopting some of this stuff, it's expensive, right? It's new, it's cutting edge. For us, we took the risk and it did pay off. So kind of the two main buckets that we were able to see that out of is one, the efficiency of running the farm better, and two, the enhanced opportunity for premiums coming back to our product. So if you want to feel better about your purchase at the grocery store, we now have the real data to help back that up. And so by helping fund this bill, getting on-farm connectivity, getting producers to taste this technology without having to take the financial burden, we're really helping develop Nebraska products to be better and to stand out in the marketplace. So I kind of actually applaud the Unicamel on getting this bill together to actually be the first in the nation to do this. Because this is really where, you know, the old adage, build it and they will come. Well, we built it. We have the great bill to do it. We just need the funding to be able to finish the job. And so with that, we're able to really get producers to adopt this technology, be able to do it without the really hard costs of doing it, and then be able to further themselves, because the economic and financial benefits will come through a better operation, use of less inputs, situations like that. But at the same time, helping them be a better steward of the ground, better Nebraskan overall, and leaving the environment better for all of us in the end. So really kind of wrap it up. The bill is passed. That's great. If we can get some funding for it to help other producers such as myself be able to adapt to this technology and not take the huge financial risk that we did, it'll really be able to pay off dividends for Nebraskans overall. So thank you guys, and hope to answer some questions about it.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Are there other proponents for LB 361? Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon, Senator Clements and the Appropriations Committee. My name is Melissa Konecki, spelled Melisa, last name Konecky. I am here in support of LB 361. A little bit about myself. I am a fifth-generation farmer from Wahoo, Nebraska. My original ancestors settled there in 1877, and it's been in my family since then. We started a dairy in the 1950s. My grandpa won a dairy calf at the Saunders County Fair. That was his prize, which I can't even imagine what a parent would think now if that was someone's prize at the county fair. But that's what happened. So then we were stuck with the dairy farm. So my grandpa and grandma started the dairy. My dad then transitioned. We were a commercial dairy selling milk. And then my parents always told me to go to college. So I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, got 2 degrees, and came back to the farm for a while and thought, this isn't where I want to be. There's no money here. It can't support my family. So we went off the farm for a job. But most recently I came back full-time to manage my family's dairy. I manage our dairy operation, and I co-manage our crop and beef operation with my brother and my father. looking at the dairy industry, we decided we needed to do something if we were going to keep the dairy running, if we were going to make any sort of, financial profit on this. So we worked to create value-added products from our dairy. We started about 2 years ago working with some partners, making cheese, yogurt, things like that. And most recently, we launched our own line of ice cream and other dairy products about 6 months ago. So we are 6 months into this brand new adventure. While our products are great, we want to continue pushing our operation and our products forward. So our next step forward is economic and environmental resiliency on our farm. And we're looking at the next step being looking for precision ag tools that can help us really monitor where we are and where we need to go. So some tools that would allow us the ability to do these things. We would be looking at solid metrics. So we've got actual data that's telling us what's happening, where things are being used. Maybe we're seeing things that we're missing, which would be great. It also helps us find ways to improve and then prove the improvement. There's no better feeling than looking at something and knowing that it's actually working and having the data to back that up. Lastly, it helps us to promote our dairy products as sustainable and help us make a great Nebraska product. Couple tools that we would like to look at using: soil moisture probes, a digital rain gauges across the property, monitoring systems for our cattle. So really looking at making sure our cattle are comfortable, are we monitoring barn temperatures, all that sort of stuff, and monitoring our water usage. So our cattle waters, our barn cleanings, our pipeline cleaning, all of that, monitoring the water usage that we're using. Is there ways that we can better use that water? Keeping in mind that our goal is that our animals never have a bad day, and we are being as efficient with our time and money as possible. So while my family cannot agree on how sustainable we actually are, being able to put solid metrics to our operation and giving us a path forward for improvement would be a great start. This bill would give us access to these tools. Any questions?
Senator Wisher.
Thank you for coming here today, and congratulations on continuing to live on your family's legacy. So when I'm thinking about the opportunity here, you have Nebraska-made ice cream. And someone could go into a grocery store and not only see that it's Nebraska-made, locally made, like you do with your eggs, but also potentially you could have a label on it showing how much water your product has conserved. And so a customer then, looking at all of the options, would say, wow, I'm contributing to supporting managing our water here in the state.
Yeah.
Is that how that would work potentially?
Yeah, so kind of one goal we've talked about is a QR code just on the corner of all of our labels that would take you to a page on our website that would show you all of these metrics, how much water each day, on each year our farm is taking and what it takes to produce 1 gallon of milk or 1 pint of ice cream and all that stuff. I think it helps the people that matters to. It helps them make a great choice. Not only, again, is it a local product, but it's a actually sustainable product, and it's proven to be sustainable, which I think is huge, and it's not happening yet.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Other proponents on LB 361?
I did want to ask where we get the ice cream.
Just one more question from you, Melissa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Where can we get your ice cream?
Oh, where can we get it? Leon's Grocery at Lincoln actually carries it. It's on the phone with them today.
Leon's Grocery.
Yeah.
All right, excuse me. Thank you, sir, welcome.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Jay Ferris, that is Jayferris. I'm the Director of Political Engagement and State Policy for Nebraska Farm Bureau. Today I'm testifying in support of LB 361 on behalf of Nebraska Farm Bureau, Nebraska Pork Producers Association, Nebraska Soybean Association, Nebraska State Dairy Association, Renewable Fuels Nebraska, Nebraska Cattlemen, and the Nebraska Corn Growers Association. All of these organizations supported LB 761 last year, and so we're here in support of funding that program that we supported last year. As you're aware, Nebraska farmers and ranchers continue to advance production efficiency. This has been accomplished through the adoption of several technologies, of which precision, innovation, and sensors have been at the forefront. What we see as a limiting to even greater use is connectivity. Keeping in mind that connectivity is not just to residences, but also to fields, facilities, and rangeland. Okay, additionally, these efficiency has been accomplished with a continual focus on our natural resources, including both soil health and water. Public and private industries continually to innovate products, sensors, and management tools that farmers and ranchers can utilize. But these come at a cost. LB 361 would continue to advance the usage of these various innovations through grants, thus increasing our efficiency and reducing our footprint. In closing, the organizations that I represent appreciate Senator Dorn for introducing this legislation and for the committee's consideration. I would welcome any questions.
Senator Armendariz.
Thanks for being here. Sorry, you probably know what you're going to get. But, I did talk to a family farmer in my district extensively during the campaign, and he talked about this technology. It's a game changer. It's wonderful. I 100% support it, as well as getting broadband to all farms in Nebraska. It's really, really needed. My contention is this bill last year that was passed with the intention of using federal funds.
Sure.
I can't help but to think it got passed fully thinking it would be funded with the federal funds. Should we have waited, since we didn't know by the time session ended, should we have waited and been right, or push it through and possibly lose the trust of the taxpayers in Nebraska by us running it through without all the information?
Sure. And that's a good question. I think there were many bills last year and possibly this year that were passed with the maybe assurance or lack of assurance of whether federal funding would be there. For my organizations would say this is important, regardless of where the funding is coming from. So
I agree. And I believe maybe it would have been passed regardless. But I guess I would feel like I was being told one thing, and then you come back the next year and ask for it another way, which does come out of different pockets, right? It comes out of different taxpayers' pockets in different ways. And I would rather be right. Like, my personal integrity, I'm not going to say something knowing that it might not be true, unless I tell them right up front, I just don't know right now. Would you pass it without knowing, or it's going to be covered and then you come back later, but you got it done and now we're obligated to fund it somehow, some way, right?
And I don't know that you're obligated to fund it, but I think this needs to be part of the consideration as you're going through your appropriations budget, is finding things that are important and to set those priorities of what needs to be funded.
I agree. I just want to try to maintain the integrity of what we're doing in this building and make sure we know when we present these. I appreciate you listening to me and being able to bounce that off of you, just the going forward.
Senator Vargas.
Thank you very much. In your testimony, the way I'm reading this, I just want to get clarity. You say that the Public Service Commission determined that it did not have the authority to use BEAD funds. Are you saying that the PSC determined that it did not have the authority to receive and administer any funds from BEAD, or that it wasn't eligible, that this grant program together wasn't eligible to use BEAD funds?
My understanding is the PSC determined that they were not eligible to use the BEAD funds for this program.
Like, they just don't have the authority. Like, you would have to find another vehicle, like maybe Department of Ag.
Yep.
All right, that's helpful.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ferris.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents regarding LB 361? Anyone in opposition for LP 361? Is there anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Seeing none, Senator Dorn, would you like to close?
I'll wait just a minute. I will compliment my staff. I was the one that messed up with this. We did have a letter from the Public Service Commission explaining all the BEAD philosophy behind this, and that they unanimously supported this at their February 22nd meeting of this year. They unanimously supported this bill. Public Service Commission took a vote at their public meeting to unanimously support this. As you read through there and you read through it, the first part there says that, and last year I remember, like I said, I wasn't remembering all the details, but they felt strong enough, the Transportation Committee did, with all the broadband issues we have, with all the broadband discussion, and how many different things that's made of, federally, state, and how many issues are going on with broadband, to include this in their committee bill. At that time, their understanding was that yes, BEAD funding would be allowable use for this. And then as they looked at it more, or it became clear, or the federal, at the time this was put in there, they thought the BEAD money could be used. Later, there became more guidelines down, and then that's when part of this couldn't be used for BEAD. So that's why the Public Service Commission then ruled that, no, we're not going to allow this under the auspices we did last year. And that is why we're back with the bill this year. On the back page of this, they are not sure about the BEAD funding. They're only asking for the $1 million of that we can use, that money's there, that we can use. They're still not certain about the BEAD money, and that's why they're asking the way they're asking. And I see Scott shaking his head, yes, and yes. So not this committee, the Transportation Committee felt strong enough about this bill, the needs of the broadband and how it will help, I call it the rural areas of Nebraska, with all the technology advancements we have in agriculture today. As one of the testifiers said, how they can now determine even the water usage of individual cows and so much. I've grown up on a farm all my life and seen what the changes have been. If you would have told me some of this stuff could happen, I told you, I don't think so. We're thinking too far in the future, and many of this stuff is here today. And not only for farming, but banking and everything else. This is why this bill was brought back, because of the need for it. Now, unfortunately, it couldn't be funded the way it was last year. We are now coming back and requesting funding so that we can get this going and get this use and for the people of Nebraska. So, and I apologize. I'm sitting back there just waiting, and I'm going to give this handout, but I don't have this handout at the start. I had it at the end. And I think former Senator Watermeyer and the Public Service Commission explained it very well in this letter. I did not come, my staff had it in the book here. I'm so thankful for that. So that way we can make a copy and hand it out to everybody. But I thank you for some of those questions. And more than anything, I call it the clarity or the reasons why this bill is now being brought back.
Other questions from the committee? Your opening, you talked about a one-time request. I thought you used that term. Are we looking for another way to find federal funds to do this, or is it going to be a state request?
My understanding, it's the $1 million each of the 2 years, and maybe Scott's shaking his head yes or no. $1 million each year for a state request. And the thought process is that the $1 million out of it, there was $2 million and $2 million, but $1 million out of that could now be used out of that BEAD fund, and then $1 million of state request. Now, not saying that between now and whenever this comes appropriated that the BEAD funding or some other federal funding can't be acquired. Today, we don't know that.
The unused funding that public service has, can they redirect that to the connectivity program, allowable use? Or do we know?
I don't have an answer for that, but we can get you that answer. My staff is here and we'll write that down.
I
and
guess
get
we
you an
don't
answer.
even know if it's unused, if it's sitting around somewhere.
Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
get clarification on that. I do not have an answer for you today. I'd like to give you an answer, but I better not.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Senator Dorn.
Thank you.
We have a position comment. LB 361, we have 2 proponents, no opponents, and no one neutral. And that concludes the hearing for LB 361. Oh, stay here. Flip the page to LB 563. I'll open the hearing for LB 563. Senator Dorn, welcome.
Well, thank you. I guess I don't have to move or whatever. We're still here. Good afternoon, Chairman Clemens and the rest of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Myron Dorn, M-Y-R-O-N-D-O-R-N, and I represent District 30. I'm here to introduce LB 563. You all know the challenges that face our rural communities and even our larger communities, keeping our downtown commercial districts vibrant, growing, and thriving. All too often, that is not the case, and we can see Main Street commercial properties fall into disrepair, and other businesses struggle to keep the customers coming to our downtown. Organizations like Main Street, Nebraska, help these downtown commercial businesses with rehabbing historical buildings, technical expertise in promotion and marketing the communities downtown, bringing together community leaders and developing a common goal for growth and sustainability and recruiting new business. LB 563 before you today brings some solutions to these problems. LB 563 would appropriate $250 million in each of the next 2 fiscal years to the Nebraska State Historical Society. This agency would then contract with entities like Main Street programs that provide educational programming and technical expertise related to downtown or Main Street revitalization, business growth, and historic preservation to community state. I just want you to know, we received the fiscal note, as I think most of you did, in the last day or two. We have since, my staff has contacted the Nebraska Historical Society, and this fiscal note that shows basically 150,000 of this 250,000 would be used for their putting this program out. We have talked to them. That is not going to be correct. That they are looking more. Previously, this program has been in the $10,000 neighborhood. And as we visited with them, we're going to change the bill of fiscal notes so that we get in that area again. There will be a lady here from the Nebraska Historical Society again talking about that. She'll explain that part of it. So the fiscal note, that will be changed or whatever. It's our intent to change that. There are representatives here from Main Street programs today that can go into more details about how their programs work and how they can help communities across the state. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And some of those will really be able to explain. They're going to get some details about what the Main Street programs are and how many there are around the state and that type of thing.
Any questions? Seeing none,
Thank you.
we'll now open up for proponents for LB 563.
Hello.
Welcome again.
Again, I'm back. Thank you for letting me come again. Once more, my name is Jill Dahlberg, Jilldolberg, and I'm the Interim Director of History Nebraska, the state's historical society. I'm speaking in favor of LB 563, which would appropriate funds to our agency for state aid to be used to contract with programs that provide educational programming and technical expertise related to downtown and Main Street revitalization, business growth, and historic preservation for communities around the state. The first 22 years of my career at History Nebraska were spent in the State Historic Preservation Office, where we work closely with communities to promote programs that we administer for the National Park Service. We love working in cities to encourage the preservation of their historic buildings through the use of tax credits, federal and state, to rehabilitate them and reuse them with the hopes of spurring some economic vitality. With the time and resources we have, we do well sharing our emphasis on preservation, but we often have experienced that while we get the pieces in place to encourage projects to move forward, something will come up to prevent a community from utilizing all the potential from their historic district being listed in the National Register or new design guidelines being adopted by their community. And by then we're working with the next community. This bill has the potential to fund a program that can linger with communities, helping them maximize and unlock local expertise and private sector investments. This will create sustainable opportunities to leverage historic preservation with economic vitality and business growth, design, organization, and promotion of assets. We will contract with an organization that has experience in doing this work and work closely with them to see more of these plans come to fruition. This can be done in rural communities, but also urban neighborhoods that have commercial districts. During the COVID pandemic, we all feared for businesses as we isolated ourselves to try to prevent the spread. An interesting outcome for Nebraska was that people found ways to take advantage of shopping opportunities that were nearby, thus being a little less traveled and less exposed to germs. But instead of going to larger markets that were a few towns away, it gave some of our Main Street businesses a renewed sense of vitality. I'm excited by the opportunity to take that trend and encourage economic development in Nebraska's small towns. We submitted a fiscal note that indicated we wanted to use a portion of the appropriation to hire a person on staff. We saw that as sort of enhancing that partnership and making sure that we were connecting it with that preservation office. We will figure it out. So thank you for your consideration of LB 563. Thank you to Senator Dorn for introducing it. I'm excited by the potential to bring a great deal of benefit to the economic vitality of our communities by emphasizing historic preservation and the qualities that make each city unique. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the committee? I do have one. In this, you said you worked with the Historic Preservation Office, and this is a historic preservation request. Is this something we've already been doing, or how is this new?
So the State Historic Preservation Office is funded 60% by the federal government and 40% by state match. And we implement programs that are required by the National Park Service. So we survey historic buildings throughout the state. We work with properties to get them listed in the National Register of Historic Places, work with tax credits, those kinds of things. And often we see ourselves as setting up some of these wonderful economic vitality things, but sometimes they just don't come to fruition. So no, it goes beyond what we're able to provide. It sort of takes it and multiplies it.
Okay, thank you. So it's not a duplication of what's been done in the past?
No, not at all.
All right. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Are there other proponents for LB 563? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jeff Ray. It's Jeffray, and I'm a professional planner. So this opportunity that I have lies with my personal passion of helping numerous communities throughout the state of Nebraska, both big and small, with the current role that I have at a consulting engineering firm in Nebraska. However, today I'm here as a volunteer role as the president of the Nebraska Main Street Network. We give our full support behind LB 563 and History Nebraska. As a nonprofit working in Nebraska, we help communities work through the revitalization process, provide support to them as they develop solutions, help them build local partnerships, and they plan for their futures with proven points that have been developed by the National Main Street organization that focus on design, economic restructuring, promotion, and organization. Our support isn't simply just based on one reason, but lots of reasons, but primarily because we share the common mission of History Nebraska to help communities develop traditional commercial districts so that they are attractive to residents and business friendly for commercial investment and economic growth while preserving and redeveloping historic structures. History Nebraska was one of 4 state agencies that came together in 1994 to create the Main Street Network under the National Main Street Program. We enjoy this partnership and a complementary relationship by help building economic vitality into historic downtowns and commercial districts that preserve their unique character while creating jobs and providing services for those local residents. Over the last few years, not only has the agency rebranded itself with a new name, we've witnessed the transition from a passive resource group to an agency that is proactively engaged with communities across the state. This effort to actively engage communities is essential in enhancing the downtown's physical environment by capitalizing on its assets, including historic buildings, and creating an inviting atmosphere through attractive window displays, parking areas, building improvements, streetscapes, and landscaping. The physical environment in this place is where the economic activities take place. However, it must be coupled with strengthening the community's existing economic base while building local capacity to leverage the local generated funds through grants and tourism and business startups and other incubators. In my eyes, this is really the intent of this bill. By helping existing businesses expand and recruiting new businesses to respond to today's market, History Nebraska can help preserve historic buildings by converting unused spaces into productive properties and sharpen the competitiveness of business enterprises and to help keep Nebraska downtowns strong. Thank you, and with that, I would take any questions you may have for me.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ray.
Thank you.
Additional proponents for LB 563. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon. My name is Michael Sothan, Michael Sothan, and I'm the Executive Director of Main Street Beatrice. And thank you, Chairman Clements, all of you senators, and especially Senator Dorn for introducing LB 563. I've given you guys a letter. I'm not going to read off of that because I hope you guys will hopefully take the time to do so. But being a community that is currently trying to work and implement elements of the Main Street approach, I wanted to share with you just kind of some of the stories of a community that is trying to do this and some of the challenges that we're facing as well. Main Street Beatrice, we're a local nonprofit. We've been around since 1996, serving the Beatrice community. And over those years, it's been ups and downs, trying to be able to navigate the different challenges that are facing rural communities for certain. Luckily for Main Street, we've been able to have at least some stability. I've now been in my position for 10 years. The average stay of a director is usually less than 3. And we actually now also have another full-time person who heard earlier, Morgan Fox, talking about the creative district aspects. But a lot of our communities don't have people like myself and like Morgan helping our business community. In Beatrice and downtown Beatrice alone, we have over 180 businesses. It's not counting property owners. We're just downtown Beatrice, town of 12,300. And so being able to work with those business owners on sometimes a real direct one-on-one basis, help them when they've got questions. If there's someone that's wanting to start a business, I was just yesterday spending the time with a couple folks that are looking at starting a business. They didn't even know where to begin. It's like, okay, let's start talking about your business plan. Let's talk about the finances, where you can maybe turn. Let's talk about legal structure. Let's not worry about a location yet. Let's get some of these other things figured out. But being able to work with these people, it makes an impact. Just since 2016, in downtown Beatrice, we've had a net gain of 30 businesses. For a community of Beatrice's size, that's massive. That's amenities that are making Beatrice a better place to live, attracting more people to want to stay here or return to Beatrice. And we're actually starting to see that. We're starting to see some of those things. At the same time, we've been starting to see a lot of property development. We've faced major challenges buildings that have been collapsing. We've had 2 that we've had to tear down in the last 5 years. We are really behind the 8 ball there. We are trying to be much more proactive. We're trying to get ahead of that problem because those properties have cost the taxpayers of Beatrice over $500,000 between the 2 to tear down. That's unacceptable. We do not need to be demolishing properties. We need to be proactive and get in front of that problem. And luckily, Main Street Beatrice is now able to do that to some degree. But the challenges that we face is when you have a lot of turnover or you don't even have a person in my position helping work with city councils, working with the chamber, economic development, trying to leverage resources that are out there, a lot of times those opportunities get missed. And instead we see continued dilapidation. We see different challenges that face our communities. And that's something that I think this bill will really help give the capacity to build up programs similar to ours, but there's things that we don't have. If I've got a property owner that really needs to figure out a challenge to their building, I have a movie theater in town. They're trying to figure out if they can add a liquor license, but they're afraid of, will it end up bringing a state fire marshal inspection? Will they pass that inspection? Well, how about we be able to help come in, bring some answers to them, help them think through that process before they have to go to the fire marshal, because that's really scary for that business owner to think about that. Now, they need to get there eventually. How do we guide them through that? And this bill will be able to provide some of that capacity to answer questions like that, but then also be able to use the programs that are currently with History Nebraska, use that creative district program that you heard about earlier through the Nebraska Arts Council, leverage federal funds, and really unlock a lot of local potential, whether that's our entrepreneurs or our city governments, and be able to get that support. And so with that, I definitely do hope that you'll support LB 563. Something to know, our neighboring states are beating us, and they're beating us a lot. Iowa has a very strong program. Missouri, extremely strong. Kansas has restarted their Main Street program. Colorado and Wyoming, all of them are providing for these types of services, but we are not here in Nebraska. And so with that, thank you all for your time, and open up to any questions.
Senator Lippincott.
How small of cities do you help?
So that's kind of a better question. In the time that I've been here, communities, and I go into like the national conference, because there's the Main Street approach that can be utilized all across the nation. I've seen Main Street working in communities that, frankly, I live in the village of Steel City, population of 45. I've seen it in communities similar to that, in little villages. Taylor, Nebraska, at one point here in Nebraska was utilizing this, all the way up to the size of Grand Island right now. So that gives you just an example in Nebraska, but every community has a downtown. I own a downtown historic building in Steel City, but my profession is in Beatrice. It's a very different, 45 to 12,300. Then you go to something like a neighborhood, maybe Havelock or something like that in Lincoln. Kind of gives you an example of the different versatility that this program can serve.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chairman.
Additional proponents for LB 563? Seeing none. Is there anyone in opposition of LB 563? Seeing none, anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, I have position comments for the record. 18 proponents, no opponents, and no one neutral. That concludes, well, wait a minute, excuse me. Senator Dorn, you're welcome to close.
I promise you I'm done after this. Today. And stuff. Because I do have other bills, but thank you very much for taking time to listen to this. This group, the Main Street, Nebraska or whatever, brought this bill to me. They were at one time funded more. They're down to approximately in the neighborhood of 40,000 right now throughout the years. I've lived in the Beatrice area, been and visited with Michael over the years. He's been there 10 years, and I see what a solid program like that can do. They've gotten several grants for upgrading, I call it the facade in front of buildings downtown, and helping new businesses come in and all of that. There are 16 communities right now that have this type of program. There are others that very much have expressed interest so that we can keep the downtown more vital and that type of things. What this would help do is it would help with their staff so that they have more people that can help those communities improve themselves. So thank you very much for your time and listening to the bill.
Thank you, Senator Dorr. That concludes LB 563. All right, we have a request from Senator Dover. He's got a scheduling conflict, and we're going to move ahead to LB 718, and we will do LB 615 after that. So we'll open the hearing for LB 718. Senator Dover, you're welcome to open.
Thank you, Chairman Clements, and good afternoon, fellow committee members. My name is Robert Dover, R-O-B-E-R-T-D-O-V-E-R, and I represent Legislative District 19, which consists of Madison County and part of Pierce County. I've introduced LB 718 to expand the arts, culture, economic development, and community in Northeast Nebraska. LB 718 will transfer $2 million from the cash reserve fund to the general fund to achieve this purpose. You will receive the amendment that specifies this bill. The city of Norfolk is currently revitalizing a 6-acre Johnson Park to create a public space that encourages appreciation of the arts, enhances culture, builds community, and bolsters the local economy. The revitalization plan includes the restoration of Norfolk riverfront. A dam and spillway will be removed, and 6 new 18-inch drops will be installed to create a whitewater effect. This will encourage kayaking and tubing along the river. The river will also receive beautification along the bank corridors and a riverside beach for recreation. The project includes an outdoor amphitheater with a permanent stage, including grass seating that will accommodate approximately 400 people. The new amphitheater will allow for Johnson Park to host live performance arts, concerts, and plays. This will enhance community and culture in Northeast Nebraska. In addition to the construction of the amphitheater and improvements to the river, the project will upgrade accessibility by enhancing bike trails and parking and updating old playground equipment. The completion of Johnson Park revitalization will create an attractive location that will be beneficial for local businesses that have struggled since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. It will also create an environment of energy, community, and culture in Northeast Nebraska. Due to rapid inflation, this project has become more expensive than budgeted from its onset. The $2 million from the cash reserve are needed by the city of Norfolk to complete this important project. I would appreciate the committee's advancement of LB 718 to general file. Representatives from Norfolk area will follow me and will be happy to give more specific information about their project. Thank you for your time.
Any questions from the committee? Senator Wishart.
Thank you, Senator Dover, for bringing this bill. To clarify, you're asking for one-time $2 million?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, other questions? Seeing none, we will open it up for LB 718 proponents.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Chairman Clements, members of the committee. My name is Josh Moning, Mayor of the City of Norfolk. It's JOSHMOENNING. Appreciate the opportunity to be before you today and appreciate Senator Dover's introduction of this amendment to LB 718. 718, the amendment would provide supplemental assistance to communities engaged in riverfront development projects. The handout that is being put in front of you provides an overview of Norfolk's work in this regard, the redevelopment of our namesake, the North Fork of the Elkhorn River. As mayor, this project has been a priority. It gives our community a chance to compete for tourism dollars via a key yet underutilized natural resource. The North Fork, the river that gave our city life in the first place, would be transformed from an afterthought into a unique water attraction, outdoor recreation space, a cultural events venue, and a catalyst for new economic growth and opportunity. Central to the revitalization plans is altering the river channel to construct a river rapids trail just off the heart of downtown Norfolk, removing a remnant of the original dam structure that help power the town's original flour mill enables us to place 7 drop structures in the river channel over a half-mile span. You can see in your handout that this work has already begun, with 4 of the 7 drop structures constructed over the past 8 months. All said and done, this will be a unique, one-of-its-kind park in the nation. Also key to the project is Johnson Park restoration. The Works Progress Administration era park was once a regional attraction, but a major flood in the 1960s severely impacted it and it has been minimally maintained since. These plans bring the park back to life, incorporating an amphitheater space for live performance and festivals, a nature playground, and ice rink, and historic storytelling features. The community has worked hard at being creative to fund the project. 1/3 of the budget is city funds, 1/3 is grants and partnerships, and 1/3 is private fundraising. Supplemental assistance today would help us address the toll that pandemic-related delays and cost inflation has had on the project. The local fundraising campaign officially launched right before COVID struck. It was halted due to economic uncertainty that led to delays in the project. Factor in the cost of inflation effects of the last 2 years, and it all adds up to a significant impact on the total cost of the project. As we're all aware, Nebraska doesn't have beaches or mountains, but we do have lots of river miles. In Norfolk, we're trying to use what we have to build on our uniqueness and spark people attraction. People already flock to north central and northeast Nebraska towns to float the Niobrara River. The state, via the Star Wars Initiative, is providing significant support to new waterfront and water recreation initiatives. Communities developing their natural resources as recreation and tourism draws are making a permanent investment in their future. Utilizing our natural assets to promote community development, in my mind, is smart planning and can benefit both urban and rural Nebraska. I encourage your support of LB 718 as amended. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee? Saying none, thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. Additional proponents on LB 718. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clements, members of the committee. My name is Tracy Jeffrey, TRACI-JEFFREY, Director of the Norfolk Area Visitors Bureau. I am here today to share with you the importance of LB 718 as amended, which will help mitigate the negative effects COVID-19 had on an important collaborative effort in Northeast Nebraska. The Riverfront Development Project is a project that will have a long-term economic impact for Nebraska tourism efforts. The project includes 3 elements: river restoration, park revitalization, and infrastructure reconstruction. This project will capitalize on its geographic proximity to Norfolk's downtown, strengthening small businesses and enhancing newly created River Point Creative District. The Norfolk community has an asset that not many communities anywhere else can say they have: an accessible riverfront located near our downtown district. This opportunity presents immeasurable benefits that reach a wide array of visitors, citizens, and organizations in our community. This attraction will make Norfolk a destination in the tourism industry. Our investment in our riverfront offers not only for Norfolk, but also Northeast Nebraska, the prospects of attracting visitors to our area. The Norfolk Riverfront project is projected to attract as many as 31,000 additional visitors to Norfolk, having a potential impact of nearly $2 million in visitor spending each year. These visitors are bringing new money into our community and will have the largest impact. Our tourism foundation is strong, but we need to enhance existing attractions and to create more opportunity to help visitors come to our region and state. In Northeast Nebraska, our proximity to both South Dakota and Iowa position us to conveniently draw out-of-state visitors, but we must continue to provide reasons for people to experience our unique attraction. With your support, we can help restore the history, tradition, and culture of our community throughout this project and ultimately make Norfolk a must-see destination in our region and state. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Senator Lippincott.
The Johnson Park is supposed to be completed this coming fall. Is it still on target?
Spring. 20.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Additional proponents for LB 718.
Good afternoon again. I will not take much time.
Welcome.
But thank you for your time, Chairman Clements and members of the committee. I am Angie Stenger, Angiestenger, and I am the Executive Director of Growing Together. And I just wanted to explain the importance of what we are building in Norfolk. We have designed this program to proactively transform Northeast Nebraska's regional economy and population growth. And we have done that with an effort to attract the 20 to 29-year-olds. And that includes making this false density downtown that is bordered by the river and making a place for 20 to 29-year-olds be able to live and work, including the Wayne State students who will be moving into Norfolk next August. As I have worked over the last 3 years and met with parents and students, the resounding question is like, really, Norfolk's going to look this great? And I constantly explain to the high school and college students in our area, yes, we're building this for you because we want you to stay here. And so, as Growing Together, we were in a very important part of the fundraising of that local partnership, as the mayor referenced, and we know how important it is. We also know that we have reached all of our businesses in Norfolk, and that as inflation hit, we were not able to add that additional $2 million that came in. And so we do appreciate your time and consideration, and I will take any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there proponents for LB 718? Seeing none, are there any opponents on LB 718?
Are you opposing your bill, Senator?
No, I'm not. Just getting ready.
Is there anyone here in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, you're welcome to close.
I don't want to, I know everybody's busy and I don't want to say too much, but Norfolk has been challenged as communities across Nebraska for many, many, many years. And there seemed to be a fresh wind blowing due to the people behind me and people in Norfolk. This is a wonderful opportunity. I know the people that are no longer working that saw this 20-some plus years ago, and they never gave up. And I'd just like to encourage you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. And we don't have any position comments, so that closes the hearing for LB 718. We will now open the hearing for LB 615. And thank you for waiting, Senator McDonald.
Thank you, Chairperson Clements and members of the committee. My name is Mike McDonald. I'm a KEMCDONNELL, represent Legislative District 5, South Omaha. LB 615 is a bill that provides funding for the Nebraska to use as the recent settlement with the opioid manufacturers to provide wellness and support services for first responders who experience secondary trauma. This funding would connect all first responders who are at higher risk of opioid exposure and dependency to behavioral health services, supports, and training. It would also provide a statewide learning plan that will ensure all public safety personnel have access to the necessary resources and educational materials required for an effective response to their needs. Building off of the success of LB 51, which was passed last session, to standardize public safety by providing first responders with necessary resources and training, this bill seeks to expand those efforts and provide additional wellness support. In fact, since LB 51's passage, almost 25,000 hours of training have already been completed with overwhelming support in the legislature last year. It is clear that Nebraska recognized the importance of taking care of our first responders. LB 615 places special emphasis on the needs of the rural agencies, which often lack the resources to properly equip their volunteer firefighters and other first responders in need of wellness support. Washington, Utah, and Ohio are already using the settlement money for these services, and Nebraska could benefit from following suit. It is important that we protect our public safety personnel by keeping them healthy in order for them to do their jobs effectively and efficiently. I strongly urge you to pass LB 615. Mental health and wellness is one of the biggest challenges faced by the public safety profession today, with firefighters suffering from PTSD at a rate of 15 to 24% higher than other professions. In addition, an average public safety professional are exposed to 188 traumatic events during their lifetime, compared to a civilian, which experiences 5 on the average. It is our responsibility as a legislature to ensure that they have access to necessary resources that can help make them successful in their jobs and protect them from secondary trauma. I'm here to answer any of your questions. I have people here that are going to testify that are still serving in that capacity as first responders, and they're going to give you personal stories and how this would make a difference going forward with their careers and the people that are going to follow them that'll serve Nebraska.
Questions from the committee? This is an existing fund?
This is the settlement money from, yes, the $2.1 million that was settled based on the Nebraska Opioid Recovery Fund.
All right. Yeah, Senator Dover.
Yeah, Senator McDonald, I was just wondering how you arrived at the amount of the fiscal note.
So that's how much the settlement was. I came up with, if the settlement would have been 4 million, I would have asked for 4 million. The settlement was 2.1.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Barmandaris.
Thank you. Senator McDonald, the 1.125, is that what you're asking for?
For 2 years.
Okay, so the settlement was
2.1 something.
carved out specifically for fire?
No, the settlement was based on the opioid settlement from the Department of Justice from the federal government. I'm saying that we should spend it towards the training,
Like the whole thing?
all of it.
What about all the other people struggling from opioid?
These are all first responders. This would be first responders. If it was more than that, we could talk about other people, but I'm talking about first responders.
Right.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. We'll open it up for proponents for LB 615. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Clemens, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Darren Garrian, D-A-R-R-E-N, G-A-R-R-E-A-N. I'm a full-time firefighter paramedic working 56 hours a week, serving the citizens of Nebraska, as do most of my cohorts. In addition to my career as a firefighter and a paramedic, I'm also the elected president of the Nebraska Professional Firefighter Association, where I'm here today representing over 1,400 career firefighters, paramedics, and emergency medical technicians who serve this great state. I want to thank Senator McDonald for bringing this bill and recognizing the necessity of utilizing this opioid funding for first responders. For some context, a quick story that happened here in Nebraska just this last week. As I was working, we received a 911 call. On our arrival, there was a law enforcement officer who was wrestling with the party who had assaulted that officer. That party who assaulted the officer appeared to be intoxicated, on drugs of some sort, and possibly drunk. I've come to recognize some of this due to my tenure on the job and my personal experience. The law enforcement officer had one of his teeth knocked out. In addition to that being struck, we were all spit on, kicked, and had blood smeared all over everybody. Eventually that party was detained and we were able to take that person to the hospital. I mention this because it wasn't on the news. Most people would never know that it happened, but it does happen here in Nebraska, and I think it's important to let everybody know the importance of that. I also mention that because I think that shows the importance of why this money, the opioid money, should go back to first responders, is because of those things. As Senator McDonald stated, the legislature has already done some similar work with LB 51 for law enforcement, and LB 615 would expand on that for first responders. Due to the significant rural safety contingency in Nebraska, some departments may not have the necessary administrative resources, research, or be able to recommend wellness networks in order to require training. So a component of this would be able to have basically some online training. And when you talk about staffing, where 1/3 of your staff has to be on duty all the time, there are some components of being able to fit those in online, being able to fit when it works. You can't really get everybody in a room all at once, all the time for some of the things that we do. It just doesn't flow. Another importance of this is the economy of scale as a statewide resource and the reduction of duplicating efforts, with our first responders hopefully being good stewards of this money for our state. I also want to add that I spoke with the parties that deliver the services for LB 51. One of the questions has been, would something like this put an undue burden on the fire marshal's office by needing more staff or things like that? The parties that are doing this for LB 51 feel that they can do it without putting extra necessity onto the fire marshal. So with that, I'll be answering questions, and we're here to help.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Any other proponents for LB 615, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. My name is Trevor Towey, Trevor. Last name is Towey. I'm the president of Omaha Professional Firefighters, representing 680 firefighters and paramedics in Omaha. I'm here today as a proponent of this bill. I want to thank Senator McDonald also for bringing this legislation forward and for his remarks during opening. I think he did a nice job explaining the need. I'm here to talk more about the demands that have been put on firefighters on a regular basis. Excuse me. And, like most industries, we're all asked to do more with less. And so that's what firefighters continue to do. Whether you're on a small Nebraska department or a big department like me, call volume's going up. We do more with less. In my department, we've increased our call volume and our 911 calls by 70%. In 15 years. So I wish I could say that the number of firefighters have increased that much, but it hasn't. So essentially we have the same number of firefighters responded to 70% more emergencies. That's 70% more traumatic injuries, 70% more assaults, shootings, suicides, and so on. That all has an effect, and it comes at a cost at firefighters' mental health. And likely, what has happened in reality is firefighters are stricken with PTSD and other behavioral health issues that they're forced to deal with. The cities and the departments need to have resources available to address that, and that's not always the case, especially in smaller departments. My department's fortunate enough, with the help of my organization, to develop some peer support teams. We've identified some therapists that specialize in addressing firefighters' needs. We've provided some training. We've even built a facility that has inpatient treatment specifically for firefighters and mental health. Even with all that, more needs to be done. And we need to address, as our exposures continue to go up, we also need to increase the resources available to departments to address our mental health needs. I think this bill is a great step in the right direction. It will provide some of that help and to get the ball rolling. And so I ask for your favorable consideration on that, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Other proponents for LB 615?
Good afternoon, Chairperson Clements, members of the committee. My name is Ryan McIntosh, MCINTOSH. I'm here today as a registered lobbyist on behalf of the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association and the Nebraska Fire Chiefs Association. On behalf of these organizations, I'm happy to testify in support of LB 615. This is the next step in what the legislature has already accomplished in standardizing public safety and wellness for first responders by providing necessary resources and training. As has been said by previous testifiers, this has been a huge support for law enforcement personnel, or huge success for law enforcement personnel. We won't recount or restate the pressures that are put on first responders, as has been very well stated by the previous testifiers. But I'll say just one more time in summary, our first responders face great risk and much greater risk than the rest of the population for exposure to trauma and require resources to address these risks. LB 615 carries out the intent of the opioid settlement funds allotted to Nebraska and will provide necessary treatment, education, and prevention programs for our first responders. With that, I ask for your support for LB 615 and thank you for your time and support.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. McIntosh. Are there other proponents for LB 615? Seeing none. Anyone here in the opposition? Seeing none. Anyone here in the neutral capacity? Senator McDonald, you're welcome to close.
Thank you. As was stated, and you all realize, we have thousands of firefighters paid and volunteer throughout the state, and we have thousands of police officers and state troopers and sheriffs doing the work every day and answering that call that when we reach out to them through 911 in an emergency situation, they're there. As I said, I would like to, I wish the settlement from the Department of Justice and from the opioid industry was more, but it is what it is. And I think based on what these first responders are dealing with daily, what they will continue to deal with into the future, and looking at some of the programs we've done through LB 51 and others, through resiliency training, through de-escalation training for the police officers. I think it has made a difference, and I think it's our responsibility as a state to help them perform effectively and efficiently, and to make sure that we're looking out for their mental health going forward into the future. And I think this is one step, maybe a small step, but still a step to help those thousands throughout the state that are responding daily for us. Here to answer any questions.
Any questions? I have one. Is this a one-time recovery or settlement, or do they expect future?
As far as I know, it's one time.
One time. All right. Very good. Other questions? Seeing none, I have no position comments. That concludes the hearing for LB 615. That concludes the hearings for the Appropriations Committee today. Thank you all for coming. 4 o'clock, not too bad.
4:15, I thought I was going to build these.
I wanted to get up.